Hi, this is Jason from Effective Dashboards, helping maintenance and reliability professionals get the most out of Power BI. So welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be focusing on the calculation of a KPI, and it will be the percentage of proactive hours completed. So we'll be looking at calculating this KPI, and also I'll be going through my thoughts on some ideas about how you might want to display it in a Power BI dashboard. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through a quick overview of what the KPI is and why we'd want to actually measure this information. So proactive work is basically work that is planned and is known ahead of time. Okay, so it's work that you actually know the scope of. It can be planned in advance. The resources, the spare parts, the requirement for machine outages, all of that information is known up front. So the work can be pre-arranged. Now, the other thing related to the work is that proactive work enables you to detect failures before they impact the business. Okay, so it's going to be preventative activities, it's going to be condition monitoring activities, it's going to be any corrective work to fix defects that are non-functional failures. And by doing that, you can actually reduce the overall cost of the business. So if a piece of equipment is taken down in a planned manner, and the work's carried out and it's all planned and it's all arranged and organised, then it's typically cheaper than if the work is a breakdown and you've just all got to scramble to try and fix this piece of equipment because we can't produce whatever it is the equipment is producing or whatever function it serves. So that's the reason it's important to understand what percentage of work is proactive versus reactive. And we typically want more proactive work, a lot more proactive work. And there can be various different targets depending on the strategy that you've got. But we're going to go for a target of around about 75% of work hours as being proactive, and we can accept 25% as being reactive. So that's going to be what we're going to look at. Now, how we're going to calculate that, we've got in our CMMS data set that we've got a set of different codes allocated to work orders, breakdown, corrective maintenance, preventive maintenance projects, and these are other performance assurance activities here. And we're going to split the proactive and the reactive work based on the type of work. Okay, so PM, PSPM, PRJ, and CM are all proactive work, and BR and PSCM are classed as reactive work. Now, if we go and look at the actual formula or the calculation, fairly straightforward here. Proactive work hours completed, so that's going to be the sum of all the work assigned to completed work orders where the work type is PM, PSPM, PRJ, or CM. Reactive work is going to be the same, the sum of the hours against completed work orders, or the sum of the actual hours against completed work orders that have got a work type of BR and PSCM. And then we're going to calculate the total work completed because we need to actually calculate this the proactive work, and we'll do the reactive work actually as a percentage of the total work completed in that period. And that's going to be what we're going to do at the bottom here, this percentage of proactive work. So it's going to be pretty straightforward. So let's get into Power BI and we'll start to build this calculation and the visualizations. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and create a new calculate column, and that's going to represent either proactive or reactive. So for each work order there's going to be a field that tells us is it proactive or is it reactive work. I'm going to use a switch statement, and I'm going to use the first expression is going to be true. So what that does is it cycles through the combinations of values and results, and it chooses whichever one it finds to be true first. Okay, so this is going to be run in for each row, and each row has got a work type. So it's going to look at the work type for that row, and it's going to assess it against the criteria that I'm going to put in here, and it's going to identify whether it's either a proactive work type or a reactive work type. So here's the work type here. So if it equals PM, then the value, the result, is going to be proactive. Now I can just copy this, and I can just go and update each one of these to identify the different work types and then either classify them as proactive or reactive. Okay, so we can see we've gone through and it's a little bit repetitive, but I've gone and created the rules here. So any of these are proactive and BR and PSCM is reactive. Now, the final one I'm going to put in is a kind of else statement. So if I just put a comma here, we can see the final argument there is an else statement, and that's just in case there's any data which doesn't have or any rows that don't have a work type, or there's a work type that's not captured in one of these rules here, and we're going to go and classify that as unknown. Okay, and then that should be us. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the new field here. We can see there's none that's unknown. It's a mandatory field whenever you create a new work order, so it should be fine. And we'll just OK that and go back in here. Right, so that's the first thing. The next thing we want to do is we want to calculate the number or the sum of the actual hours that are allocated to these completed work orders that are reactive. So they're proactive or reactive. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to create a measure for these actual labour hours. So let's go and create that. Okay, so it's a really straightforward sum there. So it's the sum of the closed work orders, actual labour hours field. Okay. So next we're going to go and calculate the actual labour hours for proactive work. Okay, so I'm going to create a calculate statement here, and the expression that we're going to calculate is going to be the actual labour hours, this one here, and that is going to be over the table that's been filtered, the closed work order table, and it's going to be where close work orders, and we're going to go and find the proactive reactive, and that's going to be equals proactive. Okay, now I'm just going to pull, once that's done, I'm just going to pull that into here, and I'm going to change this into a card, and we can see that that's a number of hours there. And I'm going to go and create another measure for the reactive hours, and I'm actually going to change that to a table now. I just like to build up a table of the measures as we go along, just to kind of keep an eye on them, make sure everything looks okay. So here's the actual labour, and I'm going to pull in this one here to get the total, and yeah, that looks roughly the same. I haven't done the actual calculation there, but that looks as if it's going to add up to around about 103,000 hours. So looking good so far. So the next one we need to do is calculate the percentage. Okay, now I like to initially anyway have the actual hours and the percentages as two different measures. You can combine it into the percentage measure, but I'm going to keep them separate because I think we might want to be able to show both in visualizations later when we create our dashboard. So create a new measure here, and it's going to be pretty straightforward, this one here. So it's going to be the proactive work completed, or percentage proactive work completed equals, and it's going to be a divide, and we're going to simply divide the proactive hours by the actual labour hours. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing for the reactive percentage as well. Okay, so we can see we've got the same for reactive work. So let's go and make this slightly bigger, and I'm going to pull those in here as well. Okay, so it's going to add up to 100%, which is great. It's exactly what we need. So we've now got the foundation of everything that we need to start actually building our visualizations. So in this section, I'm going to talk you through my thoughts and my thought process and how I'm going to put this visualization together to show this percentage of proactive hours completed and some of the other supporting information. So the first thing is the KPI, or the measure, is going to be first and foremost. So I want to have a card that's going to be quite dominant, quite prominent on the page, that's going to tell us what the percentage of proactive work over this period here that's defined by this date range is going to be. So let's put a card in here, and I'm just going to really rough cut position this. We might go and change it later on, but I'd just like to get the layout of the dashboard to begin with. And I might actually end up changing some of the stuff as we go, so let's just see how it plays out. So the first thing is proactive work completed. We've got that measure, and we can stick that straight in there. Okay. Now it's actually set at 2 decimal places, so we don't need it for 2 decimal places. I'm just going to quickly change that just now. We need to make sure that the value that's shown is relevant to the actual KPI, and we don't need this to be the 2 decimal places. One is particularly is sufficient enough. So let's go and just change that. So that's the value there. Over this period of time, 74% of the work completed has been proactive. Okay, so the target's maybe 70, 75%, so it's not too bad. Next, I think it's important that we can see, is the trend, how's the trend? Is it getting better or is it getting worse over the months? So I'm going to go and add in a line graph here. And there's a couple of options actually that might be useful here. There's a line graph, and there's also this 100% stat column. So let's look at the two of those and see the pros and cons. So 100% stat column, let's stick that in to begin with. The x-axis is going to be this month year here. So I'm going to add that in here. Sorry, in the x-axis. And we're going to add in the percentage of proactive work completed. Now, because we're already shown a percentage here, we can actually use the actual work here, and I'll show you what that is. If I put that in, that's our line graph actually, fine, so that's fine, that's going to be percentage of proactive work completed. And let's just copy that, just so we can see the comparison between the line graph and this 100% stat column chart, because I'm kind of torn as to which one to choose at the moment. So I want to see them side by side, so let's change it to that. And let's pull both of these in here, and we can see that we've got this percentage here. Now if we hover above this, because it's actually converting it into a percentage, I've got a percentage and I've also got a percentage in brackets there. So in this example here, we don't know what the absolute value is for the underlying proportion of each one of these, as opposed to this one here, which is just showing you the percentage over time, which is fine. This one here is actually splitting it between the reactive and the proactive, so an additional indication of the actual volume of work would be useful if you hover above it. So let's get rid of these two here for this one, and we will pull in the hours. Okay, so I've made this blue the proactive work because that's the thing we want to focus on, and that's the reactive work. So just looking at it there, there's a lot of colour here, and that's going to really pull people's attention to this actual chart, and I don't think, I want people to be pulled to here, and then this is a secondary aspect. So I'm probably, and this 100% doesn't really give you an idea about the volume. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the chart. That's just going to give us a pure graph over time of what this KPI is, which is fine. Keep it nice and simple. We'll add labels there in a second. But for this one here, I'm just going to try and see if this stat column chart is any better. So this has kind of got both. It's got a proportion of the work that's proactive versus reactive. Now I probably wouldn't get any more than 2 on the stat column here, and particularly as this one here is the one we're interested in, we can actually see the trend because we've got a baseline here. It's difficult if you've got a stat column to actually understand the trend of each of the categories in the stack, apart from the first one, and that's fine here because this one's starting at 0, so we can see that trend there. Now let's add some labels on here. We'll go in and go to data labels and we'll turn those on. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in the total label. So that's the advantage we've got here. You can see not only the actual labour hours here for each one of these categories, proactive or reactive, but you've also got the total. So let's leave that for just now, and let's add some data labels on to this one here. Right, okay, so I think if we've got both of these, that's a good starting point. We can see the trend over time of how much proactive work we're doing as a percentage, which is the key thing we're looking at. So that makes sense to have that there. And then underneath we've got the actual amount of work that's completed, and we can see the difference between the proactive and reactive work. So I think that's kind of making sense just now, for it's two really good charts that are going to give us an idea of whether there is a connection between the volume of work and whether it's proactive or reactive, and it doesn't really seem to be. Well, it does actually. It seems to be that the less work we do, the more proactive we are. Now, this is obviously a data set that was sparsely populated here, but in here we can see that it's, I don't know, it's too early to tell if there's a correlation between that or no at this point in time, the volume of the work and the proactive percentage. But anyway, that's going to give us that information, so I think we'll stick with that for just now. Okay, so let's start making this look a bit better. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the dimensions here, make it a little bit smaller there. And I'm going to go and just format this card so that it looks a bit better. I'm going to add a shadow behind it, just to give it a little bit of a pop, not too much of a shadow. And I'm going to actually get rid of this category here, and I'm going to add a title to this. Okay, so let's go and do that. So we've got the callout value, 20 is fine. I might make it just slightly bigger, maybe 24, because I want, like I said, I want that to be the thing that typically catches people's eye, because that's what we're interested in. I can get rid of the category label, and I'm going to add a title. Okay, so I've got a title there. Now, the trouble with these cards is it doesn't really look great if it's, I always like to start from the left-hand side. The left-hand side, and I'll do that with these charts, but it doesn't look particularly great if you do it with a card, because it just seems to be that it starts at left-hand side, it looks kind of awkward, it's not really in the centre there. So I'm going to go and centre this, okay, and I'm going to add a shadow to this. I'm going to make it a custom shadow. I'm just going to reduce the blur to 5, reduce the distance to 5, and I'm going to change the colour here to be a little bit just less, okay, yeah, just less in your face. It's just a little bit of a pop I want there, and it's just really to kind of create a border around it. Now, if we talk about borders, what I also want to do is go into effects, and I want to create a visual border. Now, I don't actually want a coloured border, but I do want it to be rounded, so I'm going to make it white, which is the same as the background there at the moment, and I'm just going to leave it there, so it just gives it a little bit of a rounded effect there. Now, when it comes to a background, I am actually going to add a background here, so I'm going to go to canvas background, and I'm going to create a really, really light grey background, and I might even make it transparent as well. Okay, so I quite like it, just having a little bit of a background there, and it just helps to outline these without actually adding a border to them. Okay, so that's fine. So I just got that proactive work there. Let's have a look at this chart here. So these charts are going to take up pretty much most of the page between the two of them. So we can actually go and just, we can do this mathematically, but just let's, for just now, just let's settle these out here. And I'm also going to go and add this shadow here just to make it pop a little bit. And I'm going to go and format paint. I'm going to paint it there. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a shadow here, and let's put the same thing in here for the effects, and we'll do the visual border as well. I'm just going to make it white. I think it just helps to soften the edges just to get this 4 pixel rounding in the edges. Okay, so already that's kind of starting to kind of just differentiate between the two of these without being too harsh about it. So that is fine. Okay, I'm going to say it doesn't look like this is actually the same colour as this one here. Let's go and just check what's happened with this effect here. Shadow 3, 5. Oh, okay. Make it slightly darker. Just make sure we've got the same values here. Yeah, it's a middle value we need to choose. Okay, perfect. So that's now the same. Yeah, I don't want it to be too subtle, so that's fine. Right, let's look at headers. So this header here, I want them all to be the same size, the headers and all of this the X and the Y axis and the labels, etc. So let's choose a size here. Normally 14, 13, 12 is what I'd be looking at here. So let's go into the title. It's at 14. I think it's a bit too big for this one. We'll change this to 12. and this one to 12 too. Okay, that's fine. Labels. Okay, so we've got the decimal places popping in here again. So actually, let's go back and get rid of those. So let's go to our data labels here, values. I'm going to leave that at 8 for just now. That's a good enough color there. And I'm going to put the decimal places to 0. Same with this as well. We don't need this to any more than just a round K figure, maybe 1 decimal place, but that's fine. Let's put it at 0 decimal places. In fact, actually, let's do this 1 decimal place there, because it is quite a little bit more important there to sort of be able to see at least 1 decimal, particularly with these bigger numbers here. Okay, so next, percentage reactive. So we don't actually need this side as well. We can't really see it. It's difficult to read, and we know that this is a percentage, and it's going to be percentage of reactive work by month, year. So let's go and get rid of that. Y-axis. Give it a title, and give it a title. Now this color here is a little bit too. Okay, there's loads of things here. Let's start with this first. That line is probably a little bit too in your face for me. So let's go and look at our lines. Okay, so it's got a stroke of 3. 2 is going to be fine. 1's probably a bit weak, so let's put it at 2. In fact, actually, can we do halves in here? I think 2's actually fine. No, you can't do halves anyway. Okay, so 2's fine for that. The labels are fine. Now, I want to make sure that these are matching up with each other, and they don't seem to be just now. So what's going on here? Why are they not matching up? There's too much space here. So I think what I might need to do is okay, I need it to start the same side here because I want these to be, look, here's what's happened here. Look, these have got, this one's wrapped on the other side here. So what I'm going to do is go back and format this here so that we've only got 2 character codes here, so that we've got a little bit more control over the size of this, so we don't get this wrapping here for some of them and not for others. So let's go into month year, and then let's go, rather than choose this month name, let's go in here and choose format. Just going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see what's happening. I'm going to like that for just now, but format date table, and we're going to choose the date. And we're going to format the date with a format which is MMM, 3 M's I think it is. So let's go in here. Something's not right there. What's happened? Format. We don't need this. Okay, so format MMM, and then if we minimize that, we can see that all of these are now exactly the same. So what is next here? So we need to still not actually just aligned up. Let's just double check that. Might just be my eyesight. So if I go and I'd like to insert a shape and just hold it against here, and then just see you can, yeah, you can see that the start of this guide, these sort of guidelines here is behind these ones here. So what is going on? Well, I think we'll just leave it for just now. It may not just be possible just with the different chart types, but you do see it roughly the same. It's roughly the same correlation between the two of them there, between the months. It's not ideal, but it's fine for just now. So month, year, we don't need that. It's obvious it's a month and a year, so let's get rid of these. So get rid of the title from the x-axis there, and get rid of the title from the x-axis there, so it's fine. And then let's tidy up these headers here, these titles. Percentage proactive work completed by month. Okay, we don't need to be month, year, we'll just say month. And then this one here is going to be actual labour hours and actual It does tell us what it is, but it's a little bit of a mouthful really. So let's go and change this. Okay, actual proactive versus reactive work completed by month. Okay, so I think that's fine. Great. And then we've got the actual labour proactive work hours, actual labour proactive work hours. I think we can probably go and just change that. Proactive hours and reactive hours. I think that'll be fine. Okay, proactive hours, reactive hours. And having seen that, I think actually when I filtered on one of these, I don't know what I did there, but I think this colour here is just a little bit too bold. Okay, I want to be able to see the proactive work, so let's go and play a bit with that colour there. And let's go to columns, and I'm actually going to change that to be that colour there. Okay, so I want it to be there, identified, but not too much in your face. Okay, so I think that's a little bit subtler there. And I'm also, yeah, I'm going to change the size of these just to make them slightly smaller. Let's see what it looks like. So let's go into our data labels, values. That's maybe a bit too small for that one. Let's have a look at this one. Okay, now let's leave them as they are. They're at 9 anyway. That's sort of a reasonable size. With the one decimal place, is it starting to get a little bit cluttered with that decimal place? I think I'm just going to leave it there. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. It's just, I'd like to keep things simple, so I'm going to leave it with just one decimal place there. Okay, so that is us. So we've got 74%. We can see the trend over time seems to be coming down over time. But we can see that there was very little work done in this periods here, and the percentage of proactive work was really high. As we get into more of a steady state, we can see that during November, December, January, February, March, we can see that it is still reasonably high enough actually. I'm going to add a target in here actually in a second. However, it does look like there's a downward trend there. So let's go and add in a target line here. Okay, that's going to be the line we're going to add, and we want to make this 0.7, and I'm going to make the color of this line, I'm going to leave it as it is actually, that's fine, it's quite transparent. And then the data label, we're going to switch that on, and I'm going to show the value of both. Okay, and the decimal places is going to be 0. Okay, and I don't think you can, yeah, you can't change the size of it. It's probably linked to the size of these values here, so we're just going to leave that as it is actually, that's fine. We've got a target line here, we can see if it's above or below the target, and yeah, that's coming together quite nicely. So next we're going to look at what can we put in this space here. Now, I don't like to just fill something for the sake of it, but it kind of looks unfinished if there's nothing in here. We could actually extend this out a bit, but then we're going to lose the comparability between the months here for the percentage and the actual volume of work, so I don't want to move that. So one thing I'm going to do is see if I can put in something here that's going to compare or break this down by perhaps discipline or department. So let's go and add a table in here. I'm going to start off by format pasting it, so we've got it looking the same as this one above. And I'm going to go, and in our data set here we can see we've got a department, so let's add that in as a column, and I'll put in the percentage of proactive work completed. Okay, so we've got department there, and that could be one thing we could put in. And is there anything else that might be useful here? Well, actually, work criticality description, that could be useful. So are we more proactive and reactive with different types of work, different criticalities of work? So let's go in here and put in work criticality description and get rid of that one there. And that might be just quite a good use of this space here. So let's tidy up these boxes, and we'll see how it starts to come together. Okay, so we can do some formatting here to make these look a little bit better, I think. So the first thing I'd like to do with these is get rid of this alternative colours here. So we'll go into presets and go to minimal, that's fine. Now, next I'm going to look at values. They're sitting at 10 just now, so I'm going to change that values to 9 so that they're the same as these other ones here. So if I go into these data labels, etc., the values here are 9, so that's fine. And I'm going to do the same here. Okay, so the format painter has done its job. That's fine. Next, we're going to give it the totals. So the totals up here, so it doesn't need to be down there either. So let's give it the totals for each one of these. And we can then make that a little bit smaller. That's fine. Now, these titles here, so let's change those. I'm just going to call this work criticality. Now, I might even just shorten that even more so just to criticality. I think I am. Because I don't think we need the word work. And then this here, percentage proactive work. Yeah, I think we can try and get that into 1 as well. So let's just call this percentage proactive work. Okay, so immediately that's simplified it. And then let's look at the decimal places. Yeah, we don't need 2 decimal places. Now, we can actually just go back, and it may have been simpler just to do that actually, just go back and reduce the decimal places here. In fact, yeah, that would have probably been a better move. And then it just cascades through to all of the visuals, unless you actually choose otherwise. But the only trouble with that is if you do it here, you can't choose then to increase the decimal places and for some of the visuals. But in this example here, this is going to be perfectly fine. Okay, so need some titles on here. So let's put a title on each one of these. And we're going to align it to the left, and it's going to be out of sync with this one here, so I'm going to maybe go back and change that, but we'll leave it as it is just now. What do we do with it? That was a 12, and that was a 12 as well. It kind of looks a little bit bigger for some reason. I think it's just because it's taking up more space. There's less white space around about it here. So let's put a title on this one, by department. I think that's fine, by criticality and by department. Okay, so that's starting to look a little bit better. We've got this blank here now. I'd normally go to the data set and deal with that, but for now, just so we can see how it's looking, I'm going to go and I'm just going to get rid of this here. Okay, just so we can see it. It's really just an exercise in formatting just now. Right, okay. So we've got engine. Again, what I'd also do is go and address this and make these sentence case rather than this uppercase, because that's actually looking untidy. You're just getting drawn to that. Why is that in uppercase and that's in sentence case? So I would go and sort that out as well. But as a dashboard, it's starting to look pretty good. The next and last final thing I want to do is just add a little bit more of a visual indicator here, a data bar actually, so we can clearly see where the spread is, because you're having to read these numbers here, and I'd rather, particularly with this one at the bottom here, I'd rather you just were able to go and actually visually see it. So we could add in one of these, but the only trouble is this, because of the space limitation, this is hidden. It's only showing the first 6 or 7 characters here. So that's why I'm preferring to use a table. I'll just undo that. But in a table, we've got the option under conditional formatting to use these data bars. Okay, so here's the data bars here, and we can see that it's actually just coloured everything as red, so we don't want that. But the other thing here is this lowest and highest value. So what that's doing is that's actually distributing each one of these as a percentage of this value here. Now it just happens to be that's 100%, so that's fine. But as if this top value is not 100%, it gets treated like 100%, and each one of these is a percentage of this top value here. Now I've actually created a video about it, so I'll leave a link below. However, because we're showing percentages, what we can do is we can use custom values, and we can start with a minimum of 1 and a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 1. The positive bar is going to go to be blue, and the axis, I'm going to get rid of this axis here because I don't want this axis here, this line, so I'll make it white. Okay, so that's tidied up a little bit, but we can't see the figures. So let's go in to the font, and in fact actually it's in the specific column, and we're going to make, first of all, change the text color to be white, and then we're going to make it off to the side here. Now it would be great if you could add a little bit of padding here, because I want it to be there, I want it to be at the bottom because the trouble is if it's not at the bottom, it can start to kind of encroach. If it's in the middle, it can start to encroach on, or the bars might not cover it. So somebody's going to have to be really low. I mean, it still could be an issue that if somebody's at like 20%, we're going to miss some of this. But typically it's going to be higher than that. So I'm okay with that in general. But I would like to see a little bit of padding here, but it's not available for this one, this particular visualization. So that's going to be fine. So let's go and format paint that, see how it looks. Right, it's done the same here, but I just need to go and add on the data bars, and we can see it here. Okay, so still again, I'm just going to make this slightly bigger here. I really want these to be lined up with each other, and that's going to be reasonably good there. Okay, so the final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some conditional formatting on here. We've got a target here of 70%. So this is going to be above the target anyway, but let's just put a bit of conditional formatting on here for completeness. So we'll go to call out value, and we'll go into the rules, the conditional formatting rules, and if it's greater than min, that's fine, and less than 2.75, then we're going to make this red. Okay, sorry, 70. 70 is the target. Yep, it's going to be red. So if it's greater than the minimum value, which is going to be 0, and less than 78, then it's going to be red. Otherwise, it's going to be the default value. Now let's just see if that works. Okay, so we can see it's working there. Right, so we've got the value here. Now these interactions here are switched on. Okay, yeah, I wanted to just show you one final thing. This here is switched on to cross highlight, not filter. So to deal with that, you switch these interactions on, click on the visual here, and you want to basically make sure that this is filtering here. And we'll do this one as well, rather than cross highlighting. So now if you click on it, these values will change rather than just highlight those. Okay, so sometimes it's not actually showing any values if it's blank. But we could deal with that if we wanted to, by going in here, going to X values and showing items with no data. And we'll do the same with this one. And that means that when we do click on here, even though some of these are 0, it's still showing you the actual fact that it is 0. It's not changing the X-axis. So that is us. There's probably loads more we can do, but this is a long enough video as it is, but hopefully it's gave you a good insight into the thinking process I've gone through when I've been putting this together, how it's positioned on the screen, some of the formatting options I've selected. Now they're not always going to be right, but I do like to have a reason for the formatting options, in my mind anyway. Now until you actually start to use your dashboard, or the people that are actually using it start to use it and provide you with feedback, you're never going to know if it's 100% successful. But this one looks okay. The one thing I will want to see and keep an eye on is when this data starts to fill up, how that's going to look. It might just be a big chunk of blue there, so we'll see that and keep an eye on that. But for now, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have found something useful and got something out of it, then it'd be great if you could give it a thumbs up and a like. And if you want to keep up to date with the latest videos, I tend to release one every week, then hit the subscribe button and you'll get a wee notification whenever I release a new video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next video.